In 1835, Texas stood on the brink of rebellion. Its settlers, Anglo and Tejano alike, pushed to the edge by Mexico's shift to centralist rule under General Antonio López de Santa Anna, who had dismantled the 1824 Constitution and tightened his grip on the province. This simmering unrest exploded into the Texas Revolution, and the Siege of Béxar would become its first major test, a raw, chaotic clash that set the stage for a fight for independence. The spark that lit the fuse was a cannon, a small bronze 6-pounder loaned to the settlers of Gonzales to fend off Comanche raids. When Mexican authorities demanded its return in early October 1835, the Texians responded with defiance. On October 2nd, they fired the cannon at Mexican troops, raising a tattered flag emblazoned with the taunt, "Come and take it." The skirmish at Gonzales was a bold act of rebellion, and its echoes rippled across the Texas prairies, rallying settlers to a cause that was as much about land and liberty as it was about pride. Emboldened, the Texians set their sights on San Antonio de Béxar, the political and military heart of Texas, where General Martín Perfecto de Cos, Santa Anna's brother-in-law, commanded a garrison of over 600 Mexican soldiers. Béxar was no dusty outpost. It was a sprawling town of sun-baked adobe, its narrow streets winding past the weathered walls of the Alamo mission and the fortified San Fernando Church. Cos had turned it into a stronghold, but to the Texians, it was a prize that could break Mexico's hold on Texas. By mid-October, a ragtag army of Texian volunteers had gathered under Stephen F. Austin, a lanky, bookish colonizer turned reluctant revolutionary. Austin was no warrior, but his quiet resolve held together a force of nearly 400 men, farmers, frontiersmen, and drifters, united by a hunger for freedom or a chance at Texas land. Among them were Tejanos like Juan Seguin, whose horsemanship and knowledge of the terrain were invaluable, and James Bowie, a larger-than-life figure whose legendary knife and reckless charisma made him a natural leader. The Texians encamped along the San Antonio River, a mile from Béxar, their numbers swelling as more volunteers trickled in. They were a rough, undisciplined bunch, scraping by on scavenged supplies. Blankets, food, and ammunition were in short supply, but their spirits burned with defiance. Cos, meanwhile, fortified Béxar, his professional soldiers manning the Alamo and riverbank defenses. His men were better equipped, but their morale was brittle, many of them conscripts far from home, questioning why they were fighting for a distant dictator. On October 12th, the Texians edged closer, setting up camp at Mission Concepcion, a stone's throw from Béxar. The siege wasn't a single battle, but a slow, grinding war of attrition, a deadly game of cat and mouse played with muskets and nerve. The Texians choked off Cos's supply lines, aiming to starve him out, while their sharpshooters, frontier hunters with long rifles, picked off Mexican sentries with chilling precision, their shots cracking through the mesquite thickets like thunderclaps. Cos retaliated with cannon fire from the Alamo, but most of his shots splashed harmlessly into the river, kicking up mud and little else. The Texians' raids grew bolder, stealing horses and supplies under cover of darkness, keeping Cos's men on edge. On October 28th, the first major clash erupted at Concepcion. Cos sent 275 men to probe the Texian position, but Bowie and James Fannin were ready, lying in wait in a horseshoe bend of the river. The ambush was swift and brutal. Within 30 minutes, the Texians' rifles and a single cannon tore through the Mexican ranks, killing or wounding dozens and sending the survivors scrambling back to Béxar. The Texians lost just one man. It was a stunning victory, a bloody slap to Cos's pride. But Austin, cautious to a fault, held back from a full assault, choosing instead to tighten the siege's grip. Weeks dragged on, the siege settling into a grueling stalemate. The Texian camp, now swollen to nearly 600 men, was a muddy sprawl of tents and flickering campfires, the air thick with the smell of smoke and unwashed bodies. The November chill seeped into their bones, their thin coats no match for the cold, and hunger gnawed as rations dwindled to hardtack and whatever game they could shoot. The rebels grew restless, their unity fraying like a worn rope. Arguments flared over Austin's indecision. Some called him a coward. Others just wanted to go home. Desertions began to thin their ranks, each departure a blow to morale. Cos's troops, holed up in Béxar, were no better off, their bellies empty and their nerves frayed by the constant harassment. Mexican sentries flinched at every shadow, knowing a Texian rifle might be waiting. Yet Cos held firm, banking on the rebels' lack of discipline to break them first. By late November, the siege teetered on collapse. Austin, summoned to diplomatic duties, handed command to Edward Burleson, a hard-edged frontiersman with a sharper instinct for action. But even Burleson struggled to hold the army together as the men grew weary of the endless waiting. Then came Benjamin Rush Milam, a grizzled adventurer from Kentucky, who'd fought in Mexico's earlier wars and had no patience for hesitation. On December 4th, Milam strode into the Texian camp, his voice cutting through the gloom like a blade. Who will go with old Ben Milam into San Antonio? The challenge was a spark to dry tinder, igniting the men's fading resolve. Over 300 volunteers, Bowie, Seguin, and others, rallied to his call, their exhaustion burned away by the promise of a fight. The plan was bold to the point of madness, a direct assault on Béxar, a house-by-house battle through its labyrinthine streets, where every corner could hide a musket or a bayonet. At dawn on December 5th, the Texians struck, slipping into Béxar's outskirts under cover of darkness. They split into two columns, led by Milam and Frank Johnson, and the narrow streets erupted into chaos. Mexican defenders, caught off guard, fired from rooftops and windows, their muskets flashing in the pre-dawn gloom like fireflies. The Texians fought like men possessed, their rifles barking and Bowie knives flashing as they stormed houses in brutal close quarters. The air was thick with smoke and the screams of the wounded, the cobblestones slick with blood. For 3 days, the battle raged through Béxar's alleys, the Texians clawing forward inch by bloody inch. They used picks and axes to smash through adobe walls, burrowing from house to house like termites, turning the town's defenses against itself. Cos's troops fought fiercely, their discipline holding against the rebel tide, but their numbers dwindled as desertions mounted. Many were conscripts, homesick and unwilling to die for Santa Anna's ambitions, slipping away into the night to avoid the slaughter. On December 7th, tragedy struck the Texians. Milam, leading a charge through a narrow street, took a sniper's bullet to the head and fell dead, his body crumpling into the dust. The loss hit like a cannonball, but it galvanized the rebels. "For Ben!" they shouted, their fury driving them forward as they hammered Cos's defenses with muskets, captured cannons, and sheer grit. The fighting grew fiercer, the Texians' momentum unstoppable despite their losses. By December 9th, Cos was cornered, his men exhausted, their ammunition nearly spent. From the Alamo, a white flag rose, fluttering in the smoky air, a signal of surrender. On December 10th, Cos capitulated. The terms were generous. His 600-odd soldiers could leave Béxar with their lives, each man allowed a single musket, but forced to abandon their artillery and supplies. As the Mexican troops marched south, heads bowed under the weight of defeat, the Texians stood in grim triumph, their cheers hoarse and weary. They had captured Béxar, along with 21 cannons, hundreds of muskets, and the town itself, a victory that seemed to shift the revolution's tide. But the cost was steep. The Texian force, now fewer than 400, was battered, their bodies bruised and their spirits frayed. The Alamo, their new stronghold, was a dilapidated ruin, its crumbling walls offering little protection. Many volunteers, their mission complete, drifted home to their farms and families, leaving a skeleton garrison under James C. Neal to hold the town. The victory at Béxar was a fleeting high, a moment of triumph that masked the storm gathering on the horizon. Santa Anna, enraged by his brother-in-law's humiliation, was already marching north with an army of thousands, his heart set on vengeance. The Siege of Béxar had proved the Texians could stand against a professional army, forging their resolve in the crucible of battle. It was a story of unlikely heroes, Milam's reckless courage, Bowie's swagger, Seguin's loyalty, and a testament to the raw, messy determination of a people fighting for their future. Yet the triumph carried a shadow. The Alamo, now in Texian hands, loomed like a gravestone, its walls whispering of the blood and fire to come. The siege was not the end. It was a prelude to the brutal struggle that would etch Texas into history, a tale of defiance written in dust and gunpowder. We hope you enjoyed learning about the Siege of Béxar. For more historic videos like this, please like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. And as always, thanks for watching.